1, 2, 3, 4. I gave you all I had to give, and I've done the best I can. So now it's up to you to finish what I began. Yes, I will always love you, and I'll be there just for you. So in all that you do, my child, tell yourself you must be true. So promise me that you will fight for what it is that you believe. No matter what you do in life, it's in the giving that you'll receive. Wherever the road may take you, those you'll meet along the way, promise me that you will count your blessings every day.
And a very good afternoon to you. Jason Hawes here on American Faith Today on this Sunday afternoon, a beautiful Sunday afternoon here, November 27th, 2016. Hope your week and your weekend has gone very, very well for you. And, of course, I hope that all of you managed to have a very happy and very blessed Thanksgiving holiday as well. And this is actually my second attempt, or kind of my revised / redo of my first attempt at a show here on Spreaker, which for those of you who attempted to listen to the original show and were unable to do so because of sound quality, I apologize greatly for that. I do believe it was something on my end, and let it be a lesson learned for myself, a lesson that I should have known before even publishing the show, but actually a couple of lessons. Lesson number one being, don't be cheap, even if you're not an extremely rich individual. Go with the better quality / more expensive headset. And I believe this hopefully will have eliminated all the static problems, purchasing a $35 headset versus a $15 headset. And lesson two, don't be in such a rush to do things. For years, I did this show, American Faith Today, on the Blog Talk Radio Network. And again, long story short, I was over there for about 4 years, and they changed the terms and conditions on those who were on the free platform, which obviously included myself over there. Don't know if everybody on the free platform was affected by it, but I was, where they decided that some of us, if we wanted to continue to produce and publish shows over there, we needed to start paying some money. And it really wasn't the fact, even though I like to hold on to my money as much as possible, because the good Lord knows that some of it disappears more than I personally would like, but paying was not the big deal. The thing that ultimately led me to decide not to be at Blog Talk anymore was if I would have chosen one of the lower paying options, I could have done like $39 a month, which again would not have been a big deal in and of itself, but I would have had to fill 2 hours of time. And with my schedule and the usual topics that I do and so forth, 45 minutes is generally sufficient. And I could find a way to fill 2 hours of time, but right now, at this particular time anyway, 45 minutes is sufficient. So I have been looking for an alternative platform. Thought I found a pretty good one here in Spreaker. I also recorded something at iPadio, which seems to be rather obscure, and you also apparently have to register. The registration is free, but you have to register to be able to listen to a show or a recording. So anyway, this is round 2 at Spreaker. Hopefully the audio, again, much better. And on American Faith Today, for those of you who may not be familiar with what I did over at Blog Talk Radio, this is a show that comes from a conservative Christian perspective. A lot of times I will be talking about political issues and current events, current news, also social issues. Every once in a while, maybe something economic, although I'm no economist. And also I'll get into some biblical topics and biblical studies, and I've decided to do a series here on the book of Daniel. Now, let me say right off the bat, I in no way fashion myself to be a Bible teacher. I consider myself somebody who is a Bible student, but there are things that each and every one of us can share with someone else, either for introspection and thought and study and debate and what have you. Not that on this recorded show there'll be much debate or any debate in a Bible study, hopefully, but seed planting as well. And that's what this is intended to be. But the book of Daniel is a book that is very timely to this generation, and this generation being the generation of the fig tree, if you will. That generation that many scholars and teachers of the Bible will point out was planted on or around about May 15th, 1948, when Israel again became a sovereign nation in name, and Christ said that generation would not pass away, not being the generation he was speaking to, but that generation of the fig tree that we are currently in. The book of Daniel being meaning or translated in Hebrew or as the name Daniel, meaning God is judge or God is my judge, and so he is the judge for all of us. And, we recently had an election, and we had two main candidates in Donald Trump and in Hillary Clinton, and we had a lot of people very stressed out over the potential nominating and appointing of Supreme Court justices. How on one side, if we allowed Hillary, they would be too liberal. How on the other side, some people perhaps fearing that Donald Trump would nominate justices too conservative. Well, we don't have to worry about that with God. He is a fair judge. He will judge everyone accordingly in a fair manner. And everyone will account for what they've done in this life. In their life, with no excuses, with no accusations, or, well, if it would have been for this or hadn't been for that, it will be very fair. And certainly he has no desire for any of his children to perish or to go into the lake of fire, but unfortunately, as we know from this word of God, many will. But nevertheless, he is the judge over all of us. This book of Daniel as well is a book that is the first half, the first 6 chapters are basically history, at least as far as we're concerned. They are a recording, a chronicling of the events that Daniel, as well as 3 other Hebrew youth, primarily being Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, or as you perhaps know them, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, what happened to them during the time of the captivity of Babylon, or to Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar. And then the last 6 chapters are prophecy, future from Daniel's perspective, in many cases future from our perspective as well, but also some of those things that very well have already have occurred. Now, do not get too caught up, though, in history being just history. Because as Paul would write in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 11, that those things that happened historically are for our admonition and for our warning and for our learning, upon whom the latter ends or the ends of this earth or ends of this age have come. And you can also point to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 9, Solomon writing basically and paraphrasing that the thing that has been shall be again, that which was done shall be done again, and there's no new thing under the sun. So in God's Word and in history, you have many types that will be repeated in one way or another throughout the ages and from generation to generation, again, showing us even what not the type, but the final one world system run by Antichrist, how it will basically operate, because God, very good to his children and good enough to clue us in on that if we'll only read it and understand it. So, that being said, let's get into the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 1, verse 1, and it reads, "In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. And this would have been about 497 BC. Daniel would have been a youth of about 16 years old at the time that this occurred, having been estimated to have been born about 513 BC. And this was the point in which the people of Judah, every king that they had, all the people who lived in Jerusalem, were able to see what happened to their brethren up north with the kingdom and the house of Israel. How idolatry led them so far away from God that God finally was fed up with those in Samaria and from those 10 or even 11 northern tribes, that ultimately he allowed the Assyrian to take them captive. From there, we know that they were scattered. They left the area that today we know as northern Iraq, went even across the Caucasus Mountains in Russia, thereby originating the term Caucasian, having nothing to do so much with skin color or a race, but that event, and then settling throughout Europe and even eventually the Americas, in this country of the United States of America. But having observed where Israel went wrong, Judah, as it is written in 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, sinned even to a greater degree than did Israel, and finally God had had enough of Judah as well and their idolatry, and he allowed them to be taken captive for that period of 70 years. Verse 2, And the Lord gave Jehoiakim king of Judah into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. And here you have that which was holy, that which was of God, being mixed with pagan idolatry. And normally this would be something that God, of course, would frown on, but he allowed it. And let it be, again, a type for us in this generation, that God will even allow Satan himself to sit in the temple in Jerusalem, proclaiming himself to be God. It's going to happen. And so it is. Verse 3, And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes. And by the way, again, just to document, I'd said this in the original recording, I still have my notes here, but just to document that not only did God allow this, but God set this into motion, and even chose Nebuchadnezzar. You can read that for yourself in Jeremiah chapter 27, verse 6, where he refers to Nebuchadnezzar as his servant. And so that is, and so he will allow the Antichrist during that time to test his people and all the people on the earth at that time to see whether or not they recognize that the first so-called Messiah that shows up is a fake, or whether they'll be deceived by him and worship him and even take that mark of the beast, which simply is believing that he is Christ, into their forehead, and even helping his ministry along by the work of their hand, taking his mark into their right hand. But anyway, here we have Nebuchadnezzar speaking to the master of his eunuchs to go and bring certain children of Israel to be taught. Now, what children is he going to want picked out here? It's not everybody, and again, we can take a lesson from this as well. Verse 4, Children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. So in other words, Nebuchadnezzar wanted the best of the best, the brightest here, who could be taught in his kingdom, in his way of educating, and then could teach others as well. Nebuchadnezzar, by the way, translates or means Nebo protect the crown. And Nebo was a pagan god of learning, and so it was that we can find in history